Hunt blinks first in the doctors' dispute and agrees to more talks. The Health Secretary had said it was too late for more negotiations, but in a potential breakthrough, the two sides will now sit down again next week.
Also tonight.
Oh my God, Sarah, this is gonna hurt you.
Canada burning, a state of emergency as the wildfires spread.
Closer to an inquiry into police violence in the miners' strike after revelations officers were linked to Hillsborough.
And celebrating the nuclear prowess of the most secretive state in the world.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Charlene White.
Good evening. For the first time in weeks, there's new hope tonight for an end to the long and increasingly bitter dispute between doctors and the government. The Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, has agreed to pause the introduction of controversial contracts to allow talks to resume next week.
The row has seen a series of escalating strikes in hospitals across England. The Department of Health had been sticking rigidly to its guns, saying it was too late to stop the contracts being imposed. So what's changed? Our political correspondent Romilly Weeks reports.
Morning, sir. Good morning. Are you going to talk to the doctors sometime, Terry?
First thing this morning, the Health Secretary wasn't talking.
Not going to resume talk, sir?
Not to our cameras or the junior doctors. But by mid-morning, the government had blinked, deciding it would temporarily pause bringing in new contracts for junior doctors and restart talks with the British Medical Association.
I hope very much that the BMA will take up the offer to talk constructively. The Junior Doctors Committee is meeting on Saturday, so we are seeking some assurances following that meeting on Saturday, by close of play, that they will negotiate constructively on the outstanding areas of disagreement.
There haven't been talks since February. Instead, 6 days of strikes. Junior doctors unhappy at the government's imposition of a new contract. Currently, junior doctors are paid extra for working antisocial hours before 7 a.m. and after 7 p.m. during the week and all day at the weekend. But the new contract changes what's classed as antisocial, so it starts later at 9 p.m. during the week, and there'll be nothing extra for working between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Saturday. The BMA, who this weekend were due to discuss further strikes, have said they are willing to talk too.
The BMA would welcome definitely the government's change of heart and its willingness to re-engage in discussions. Junior doctors do not want to take any form of industrial action, and the fact that the government's willing to talk about the issues that junior doctors face is definitely welcome.
The strikes have already been punishing. Over 130,000 operations and appointments have been cancelled. But those on the front line say this is about much more than just weekend pay.
I think it's really good that the BMA have offered the government again the chance to negotiate. I hope the government just use this now as an opportunity to sit down and have some real meaningful negotiations, some realisations that this is not about Saturday pay, that there is a huge remit of ground and work that needs to be made to make sure that this contract is safe.
The dispute has dragged on for 8 months now at an increasing cost to patients. Nothing is resolved yet, but the recognition that it is finally time to talk is the first sign of progress.
And Romilly's outside the Department of Health now. And Romilly, this change of heart from Jeremy Hunt certainly seems to be a sign he wants to bring this dispute to an end quickly now.
It does. For a long time in this painful standoff, it looked as though neither side was prepared to blink first. As recently as this morning, the government was saying it was too late to pause for talks because the contracts were already being brought in, but something happened to weaken the government's resolve. Without these talks, we would undoubtedly be heading towards more strikes. I know that the Health Secretary went to the Prime Minister with this plan, and the Prime Minister signed off on it. So the upshot is, provided that we have that assurance from the BMA on Saturday that the talks will include Saturday working hours and unsocial pay, then talks will start on Monday.
Right, Romilly, thank you very much indeed.
The raging wildfire that forced the evacuation of an entire Canadian city is spreading south, forcing more people to flee. Some residents are having to move for a second time.
The fire has grown to 5 times its original size and a state of emergency was declared overnight. But there are hopes a change in the weather could help bring it under control, as Paul Davis reports.
They are driving away from homes they have abandoned to the flames. The fire so close, it's showering sparks from trees it's consuming alongside the road. The heat is such, a motorcyclist winces and takes avoiding action. And caught in this vision of Armageddon are thousands of families running for their lives.
Oh my God, Sarah, this is gonna hurt you. Babe, we got the cash. Is Mom out? Yeah, she's going. I think she's a girl ahead of us.
As the emergency services admitted defeat, the biggest mandatory evacuation in recent history got underway. How long it'll be before Fort McMurray will welcome people again, no one can know.
Well, it's a disaster, and I find that that's not fair. They didn't even let us take our things, and when we asked them, so we lost everything now.
The city had laid on a fleet of buses to help the less advantaged escape from the inevitable destruction, but there were strict limits on what possessions could be taken. For many, it was the clothes they could carry and their pets, but no more.
You don't know what's burned and what's not burned, when you can go back, and now you're sitting here and all you see is red flames. It's pretty scary.
Pictures from space show the green forested area around the city as it was, and the smouldering scar left by the fire, fanned by strong winds. The evacuation has so far prevented loss of life, but in the suburbs where the flames have done their worst and moved on, there is little left for people to return to. 2,000 buildings have been destroyed, and tonight there are fears a large portion of the city may be lost before any improvement in weather conditions. Paul Davis, ITV News.
Some breaking news now, and 28 people are thought to have been killed in an airstrike on a refugee camp in northern Syria. These pictures, which have not been verified, are said to show destroyed tents at the Al Kamuna camp in the province of Idlib, close to the Turkish border.
Here, the acting head of South Yorkshire Police has welcomed suggestions of an independent inquiry into the so-called Battle of Orgreave. Thousands of pickets and police clashed in the most violent incident of the miners' strike back in the 80s. Former union leader Arthur Scargill has demanded the inquiry after claims of a police cover-up. It's emerged that the same senior officers were involved in the aftermath of both Orgreave and the Hillsborough disaster. Damon Green reports.
It was a pitched battle that decided the outcome of the miners' strike, a confrontation which left deep scars on the mining communities of the north of England.
All of a sudden, the line opened up, and out charging towards us were these mounted police on horseback.
The miners who were there have always maintained the police who faced them were out to hurt as many of them as possible.
Well, they chased us into the village. So it seemed to be that, I don't know, there'd been some kind of instruction, today's the day, we're going to have these and we're going to get a lot of these. And they did get a lot.
Now, just days after the conclusions of the Hillsborough inquest jury, which vindicated the victims' families and were damning of South Yorkshire Police, the head of that force has said he would welcome a fresh investigation. The Hillsborough inquests, he said in a statement today, have brought into sharp focus the need to understand and confront the past and give people the opportunity to explore the circumstances of such significant events. I would therefore welcome an appropriate independent assessment of Orgreave. The Battle of Orgreave saw a number of miners charged with riot, charges which later collapsed in court. One ex-policeman from a different force says a senior officer tried to dictate statements for use in a criminal trial.
This was totally unprecedented. So said it's not a request, it's an instruction.
The Independent Police Complaints Commission compiled a report on Orgreave last year, some of which was suppressed because of links to the ongoing Hillsborough investigation. It's now considering whether the blacked-out paragraphs can be made public. After that, the Home Secretary must decide if the whole truth of Orgreave will emerge. Damon Green, ITV News in South Yorkshire.
BT announced today it's to invest £6 billion, bringing faster broadband to millions more people. But many of its customers are angry that while their bills are going up, their internet speed isn't. And millions of people in rural areas still won't benefit, as our consumer editor Chris Troy reports.
BT is riding high, building big audiences for its digital sport and growing profits. But not everyone is cheering. Some say they're being left behind, victims of sluggish broadband.
You have to see it to believe it.
Today, BT's boss announced a new speed-up plan.
Well, we've announced today that by 2020, we've got the ambition to get to 12 million homes and businesses with ultra-fast speeds across the UK.
BT made £3.3 billion in pre-tax profits. It'll invest £6 billion extending its very top-speed, ultra-fast broadband to reach at least 10 million homes. But an estimated 2.4 million homes in Britain can't even get minimum broadband speeds.
Here's a BT cabinet. They're on many streets. Feeding into it typically is fibre cable. It's super fast. But there's a problem. Leaving it and connecting to our homes is copper cable, and that's far slower. Today BT said things will change, but not for everyone.
BT is fitting more fast fibre to connect customers, but its priority is new homes and businesses. It's also speeding up its copper cables. But Charles Arthur is one of those who doesn't think he'll benefit, living in a part of rural Britain with slow downloads.
Slow speeds means that it's very frustrating even to do normal things. If you want to look at a YouTube video, you can't really. You give up before it starts loading.
We're using more gadgets more often and wanting more speed. For BT, that means more pressure to deliver. Chris Choi, ITV News.
In remarkable scenes in Kenya, a woman has been pulled alive from the rubble of a building 6 days after it collapsed. Rescuers dug with their bare hands to save her, and crowds applauded as she was carried to an ambulance. And tonight, 2 more women and a man have also been saved. Here's our Africa correspondent John Ray on the dramatic rescue.
This is an unlikely life that has been saved. A woman who has spent almost a week entombed in rubble, in which dozens of her neighbours have died. You can understand the relief. For the rescue teams, a triumph against diminishing odds. She was discovered, apparently in good spirits, trapped in a small pocket of space amid tons of shattered masonry. It had taken 2 hours to dig her out. "I'm okay," she told her rescuers. The 6-storey block in one of Nairobi's poorest neighbourhoods collapsed last Friday after days of heavy rains and landslides. One other miracle to emerge: 2 days ago, a 6-month-old baby found close to the body of her mother. Authorities say the building was put up without permission. Its demolition had been scheduled but not acted upon. All that remains now are lucky survivors and 70 souls still missing. John Ray, ITV News.
Still to come on the evening news. Stay another year, the plea from the Leicester City manager to his Premier League title winners, and
Blues and two-step. Get it? The dance-off challenge that's now spread to Britain. Those stories and more right after the break.
welcome back. ITV News was given a rare glimpse today inside the secretive state of North Korea. The country is gearing up for its first party congress in 36 years, which is effectively the coronation of its totalitarian leader, Kim Jong-un.
To the consternation of the West, he will use it to promote the regime's nuclear ambitions. But most of all, it's designed to boost the personality cult surrounding North Korean leaders. Our correspondent Debbie Edward reports from Pyongyang.
A precise, proud and patriotic performance is demanded of all those taking part in this week's Congress celebrations. Across the capital, Pyongyang, mass choreographed routines are being rehearsed as the city prepares to host the first gathering of the full Workers' Party committee in 36 years. This man says it will be a great occasion to honour the country's leader, Kim Jong-un. A guide welcoming us to where founding leader Kim Il-sung test-fired the first machine gun manufactured in North Korea. Our media group today taken on a tour of a former munitions factory where the country's ambitious weapons programme was born. Kim Jong-un, we were told, has honoured his grandfather's legacy with the testing of an H-bomb in January this year. The last Congress, held in 1980, was used to declare a line of succession. This time, hundreds of committee members have arrived to see the Kim family rule formalised, with Kim Jong-un confirmed as supreme leader of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. A record number of foreign journalists have been invited to witness the event. Leader Kim Jong-un wants the world to see a DPRK whose people and economy are thriving in spite of the toughest sanctions they have faced in decades. When images of a nuclear program form the backdrop for school concerts, it's evident that it is something to be celebrated here. Education and the economy will be key themes of the Congress, but Kim Jong-un is expected to declare that the country's success is measured by its military might. Debbie Edward, ITV News, Pyongyang.
Voting is underway across the UK today in elections for regional assemblies, mayors, local councils and 2 by-elections. But in Barnet in North London, a blunder saw thousands of voters turned away, including Britain's chief rabbi. Well, our political correspondent Carl Dinnan is outside a polling station in Barnet tonight. Carl, what went wrong?
Well, it would appear that every single one of Barnet's 155 polling stations began today without the correct electoral register, meaning the voters turning up to vote in the London mayoral and assembly elections were being turned away. Now, the problem was rectified by mid-morning and Barnet have issued an apology from their returning officer saying taking part in the democratic process is a fundamental right for our residents. I would like to apologise to everyone who experienced problems with voting in Barnet today. Now, what happens next? Well, the polls here, as everywhere else, are still open until 10 o'clock tonight. But of course, not everyone can make it back. The chief rabbi is amongst those who was turned away and then went travelling and can't come back. So some people will have been disenfranchised. Whether or not there is further challenge will depend how tight the affected races were. If they turn out to be tight, some of this could be challenged in the courts.
Carl, thank you.
The Leicester City manager Claudio Ranieri drank a champagne toast to his players today and then begged them to stay with him for another year at least. Since the club stunned the world by winning the Premier League title on Monday, there's been speculation about what will happen to the squad. But the manager and the club's vice-chairman are confident there won't be too many changes. From Leicester, our sports correspondent Ian Payne reports.
Claudio Ranieri describes journalists as his Sharks, and the Sharks gave him a round of applause as he arrived today, and then he timed it. It's all part of the show, as was this. Champagne for all. But after the celebrations, thoughts turned to the summer. How will Ranieri stop his players moving on to more lucrative pastures?
I suggest to all my players, stay 1 year more. Stay with us 1 year more. Don't go.
As Monday night's celebrations at Jamie Vardy's house showed, these players are a strong band of brothers. Congratulations. And the man who may have to contact the bank to keep them together is the club's vice-chairman.
At the end of the day, it depends on the players, but we'll try everything we can to hold all the players.
Do you think you'll have to pay them more money in wages?
It depends, no? Because some players got the contract with us already.
On Saturday, for Leicester's final home game of the season, Italy's world-renowned opera singer Andrea Bocelli will be performing, because he wanted to.
He called me, I don't remember, 1 month and a half ago, 2 months ago, and he was so happy what he's doing to Leicester. And he said, I'd like to come and to sing something. Oh, it's great. It's great. Why not?
What Ranieri has achieved this season has been so phenomenal that tickets for Saturday's game are exchanging hands for up to £8,000 each. Saturday will also see Ranieri and his players receive the Premier League trophy. It's going to be quite a day. Ian Payne, ITV News in Leicester.
And finally tonight, a real case of police camera action. Officers in Scotland have responded to an internet craze started by police in New Zealand.
It involves detectives dancing the so-called Running Man Challenge, and now the gauntlet has been thrown down to their colleagues in the Met Police. Sally Lockwood reports on the Bobbies with the beat.
A piper and police outside Edinburgh Castle is not an unfamiliar sight, but the internet makes people do strange things. Scottish police have a new beat, and it's all thanks to a challenge from colleagues in New Zealand. Police there made this video to attract new recruits, and the Kiwis threw down the gauntlet to forces around the world. The New York Police Department raised the bar, dancing with local kids in front of Brooklyn Bridge. And this is where it began. A video by 2 basketball players became an internet hit.
New Zealand Police Running Man Challenge received by ACT Policing.
Australian officers are now the latest force to accept the challenge, but London's Metropolitan Police have declined Scotland's offer to give them a run for their money. Sally Lockwood, ITV News.
Oh, spoil sport.
Maybe we should do it.
Oh, yes, we can lay down the gauntlet.
Right out of time, I'm afraid. That's it for now. Tom Bradby is here at 10.
But from all of us here on the team, goodbye.
Bye-bye.